My name is Austin Hirschberger, and this is my EDL 853 Module 14 case study. Summarizing the case, this case takes place at Nottingham High School, which serves about 3,200 students. The school was built in the 1950s, and approximately a quarter of the building is not up to code to accommodate for individuals with disabilities. Facts of the case: Miguel Hernandez is a sophomore who is the star quarterback for the high school football team. During a game, Miguel took a hard hit and then was transported to a hospital. It was determined that Miguel suffered a spinal injury and is now paralyzed from the waist down and unable to walk. Miguel went through his rehab and is ready to return to school now with the use of a wheelchair. The only accommodation his parents requested was access to classrooms. After his return to school, we find out that Ms. Guzman, the school counselor, told Miguel that he is no longer enrolled in his biology class because the classroom is not wheelchair accessible and is now enrolled in another science course. Miguel plans to attend college and needs the credit from his AP biology course to satisfy his college prep requirement for a college that he wants to attend. Miguel's parents are obviously upset by the change to Miguel's schedule and were not informed by Ms. Guzman of the change. His parents requested a meeting with me, the principal, and demanded that he be reinstated into biology. They brought Miguel's attorney to the meeting. His attorney mentioned Section 504 and FAPE, and that Miguel's rights are not being met during the meeting and implies pressing charges due to Miguel's rights being breached. Reporting legal or ethical issues: Miguel was physically harmed by the hit that he took in the football game, obviously, and is now paralyzed from the waist down. Nottingham High School or any players on the opposing team would not be liable for Miguel's injury or the cost of the rehab. Athletes sign a waiver at the beginning of the season that they understand the risk of injury when playing a sport. The decision by Ms. Guzman to remove Miguel from his biology class without his parents' consent has harmed him emotionally and hinders his chances of meeting the requirements he needs to attend the college of his choice. Miguel does not qualify for IDEA. He has a disability, but does not need special education services in order to keep up with his peers and participate in the general education setting. Because a quarter of the building is not up to code for people with disabilities, the only section of biology that we offer is in one of those classrooms. I feel this discriminates against Miguel and other individuals who use a wheelchair. Miguel uses a wheelchair for mobility and is therefore entitled to rights under ADA. The fact that his biology class is inaccessible to him breaches those rights. Continued. Because Miguel has a disability that limits a lifetime activity, he does qualify for services under Section 504. As the principal, I should have reached out to Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez prior to Miguel's return to inform them that we need a request for evaluation in writing from them to ensure that Miguel receives the rights he is entitled to. Upon request from his parents, the school would conduct an evaluation for Miguel to receive needed supports. The process for 504 is not as extensive as it is for an IEP evaluation, and it could have been something that we would have in place by the time he returned. Under Section 504, parents are not entitled to a meeting during the creation of the 504 plan. However, oftentimes schools do invite the parents, although they do not have to invite the parents. Miguel's parents in this situation would have valuable input and would be invited to the meeting. Myself, Miguel's parents, Ms. Guzman, the special education staff, and Miguel's physician should have met prior to Miguel's return to school to ensure that the school had the accommodations and supports needed to provide the rights of FAPE for Miguel under Section 504. This means equal access to the general education curriculum as non-disabled peers. Following this process would have avoided the situation altogether and would ensure all parties are on the same page. Synthesizing what has happened in a single sentence: the school is facing legal issues with a student who is paralyzed and his parents because of an unexpected change to the student's class schedule, which was made due to the school's lack of wheelchair access into the classroom. Synthesizing the facts. These are known facts. The people in this case are Miguel. He was paralyzed. Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez, his parents, they stated that the only accommodation they felt Miguel needed is access to the classroom, and they are upset that Miguel's schedule was changed. Howard Carey, he's Miguel's attorney. Ms. Guzman, the school counselor, she's the one who made the change to the schedule without consulting anybody, and myself. The place, Nottingham High School, we covered that at the beginning. The football field is where Miguel's injury occurred. The biology classroom, we know it's inaccessible to a wheelchair, and he was moved to another science course, which we know is obviously accessible to a wheelchair. And then the program, biology class, it serves as a college prep requirement for Miguel. The science class does not meet that college prep requirement, although it does meet the requirement needed to graduate. And as far as we know, this is a public high school. Unknown facts, biology teacher doesn't mention who the biology teacher is in the case. It'd be important to know what accommodations they would suggest making in order to keep Miguel enrolled in the class. Ms. Guzman, did she talk to anyone else about the schedule change or make the decision entirely on her own? It sounds like she made it on her own, but we don't know for sure. Does she have any documentation of her meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez? And then with Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez, did they request an evaluation from Miguel to qualify for services? Things we should know about the place, biology classroom, what other classrooms are available, and why is the current biology classroom inaccessible? Also in the biology class, are there other biology courses available that would satisfy the college prep requirement, possibly at another school? Review and prioritize the information. I feel that this conflict is damaging to the community because it brings into question why a quarter of the building is not up to code. It also presents a potential lawsuit to the school, which has a negative stigma. However, we have an opportunity as a school to show that we support all students and value the rights of individuals with disabilities and want to provide equitable access to the classroom and the curriculum, so it's important that we make the best decision with this case. Individuals of stake in the outcome of the decision are Miguel, Miguel's parents, Ms. Guzman, potentially the biology teacher, the special education department, and other individuals with disabilities. Up to this point, no, not all of the relevant stakeholders have been consulted. The school should have consulted Miguel's parents, the SPED department, his physician, Ms. Guzman, and Miguel's biology teacher to decide what accommodations need to be made. As a principal, there are two people that I would contact following the meeting with Miguel's parents and his attorney. The first thing I would do would be to contact Dr. Harvey, the superintendent. We know that he has a great relationship with staff in the district and it would be important to seek his advice in the decision. I would also contact other administrators in the area to see if they've dealt with similar situations and whether they've dealt with ensuring their buildings are up to code. Based on the information I have, I believe I have enough to implement a decision that will benefit all parties. Identifying the options. I identified 5 options. The most obvious, but also the worst option, is to do nothing to correct their circumstances and deal with the consequences. Consequence of that option is it presents a lawsuit against the school and potentially against individual staff members of the school. Option 2 is the most liberal option that we have, and that's to see if a biology class that would qualify for college prep requirement is available at a nearby school or community college and then transport Miguel to that school. This option, one consequence is it seems like a cop-out to me and doesn't communicate that the school values the needs of students with disabilities. Option 3 would be to move the biology class from its current classroom to one that would accommodate Miguel's wheelchair. One consequence is it presents issues logistically because we don't know if classrooms are available or in the trailers, and would also potentially involve asking 2 teachers to swap classrooms in the middle of the year. Option 4, we could also add another section of biology and ask a professor from a nearby community college to come to our school to teach the course. One consequence of that option is it would involve the district having to pay an extra stipend. And then the 5th option I identified, as far as we know, the case study, it doesn't tell us how long he's been between the injury and his return to school, but Miguel is a sophomore student, and that would give him 2 years to complete the college prep requirement before graduation. We could arrange for Miguel to enroll in the biology course the following school year. One consequence of this is it presents issues with the curriculum because Miguel has been keeping up with his studies and would have to start over the next year. Pros and cons of the options. Option 1, pro, I don't have to make any adjustments to the current layout of the school or procedures of staff members. The con is obvious. The school would potentially face multiple lawsuits and would not win in court. Option 2 Pro, the existing building and classrooms would not need to be adjusted and Miguel would still meet his college prep requirement. Con of this, Miguel's parents would more than likely not support transporting him to another high school. Miguel would be separated from his gen ed peers during that class and the school would face expenses and logistics of the transportation. Option 3, just moving the biology class. Miguel would be able to continue on with his current progress, meet his college prep requirement, and have wheelchair access to the classroom. Con with this, if no classroom is available, teachers would have to swap rooms or use an unfamiliar space, possibly cart equipment, plus at least one class would still lack wheelchair access. Option 4, bringing in a community college professor, students would receive more direct instruction from the teacher because of the smaller class sizes. Miguel would meet the college prep requirement and have access to the classroom. Con with this option depends on the availability of the community college professor and would also cost the district an added stipend. Pro of option 5, this gives the school time to allocate funds to the improvement of the school to ensure that it is up to code and would allow Miguel to meet his college prep requirement in the future. Con with this, Miguel's progress in the course would be halted. His parents have also already paid for the college credit and does not show that the school has a sense of urgency to correct the issue. Choosing the best option. I feel that the best option and most simple solution to this problem is to move Miguel's biology class to another classroom that would be wheelchair accessible, possibly the science course that he was moved to by Ms. Guzman. Choosing this option will involve ensuring that all stakeholders are in support of the decision and taking measures to prepare our building for the future through policies and procedures relating to equitable access for people with disabilities. With any of the options, one of the necessary steps will be implementing a school policy that ensures equitable access to every educational resource for the success of all students. The biggest hurdle with this option is identifying a classroom that is A, either already available, or B, that a teacher of the new classroom, assuming they're all occupied, would be willing to trade for just one class period. This option potentially brings into play an additional stakeholder, whoever the teacher is that we need to swap rooms with. And then choosing this option will also involve upgrading the remaining quarter of the building that is not up to code in the meantime. Installing wheelchair ramps, replacing desks for extra space in the classrooms can be done during the summer in order to avoid similar situations. Implementing this solution involves consulting all stakeholders and getting them on board. I feel that this option benefits all parties. Miguel and his parents and the attorney would agree to it. It allows Miguel to continue with his progress in the course and achieve his college prep requirement. And Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez's request for Miguel to be reinstated in the biology class is answered. Section 9, implementing your decision. This option is not just as simple as moving classrooms. It will involve additional steps to ensure FAPE rights are met across the board. The steps I will take are, first step is meeting with the stakeholders that are involved in the situation. This means apologizing to Miguel and his parents and assuring them that Miguel's rights through ADA and Section 504 are in our best interest, and would explain to them the benefits of this option and the steps we will take to improve the building. I would also meet with Ms. Guzman and advise her to discuss all decisions with an administrator and people that are affected by the decisions in the future. I would ensure her that my trust in her has not been lost and ask for her support in this decision. The second step I would take is to identify a temporary classroom for the AP biology class to move to. I'm going to assume all classrooms are occupied by teachers, so this would involve consulting teachers who have a class during the same time as biology, where swapping for them wouldn't really be an issue. Because biology involves a lot of equipment, the biology teacher may need to cart that equipment to the new classroom. The next step would be to take, next step in the process is to analyze our school budget and consult with the superintendent how we can allocate funds for the improvement of the remaining quarter of the building. Identifying needed funds and the sources they will come from, possibly community partners or grants, is urgent to get the ball rolling so improvements can be made in the future. Construction should be scheduled for during the summer, not during the school year, so that the following school year, temporary movements of teachers will not need to be made. The final step in the process is implementing a much-needed school policy that protects the rights of students with disabilities and ensures that they receive equitable access to educational resources and opportunities that students without a disability receive. Thank you.